Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a new video. So a question that I see come up a lot of the time when it comes to scrub pythons is just how big do these snakes really get as adults, and how big, frankly, should they be when they're adults? Some of these numbers are kind of misleading when you hear 10, 12, 14 feet. Is that even true, for one? And two, what does that actually look like, considering that scrub pythons are very slender bodied, especially when compared to some of the other large pythons like berms or retics. So what does a 10-foot scrub python actually look like? And then with some of these smaller types, how big do they really get? What does that actually look like? So today I'm going to be taking you guys through some males and females of different species and localities of scrub pythons that I consider to be full-grown adults, and kind of explain a little bit more about each one. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so starting off, taking a look at a male barneck scrub right here. Just for reference on these guys, I'm about 6'3", so compare that relative to me, but he's about 9 feet long. He was born in 2020. This is an animal that I produced. So going on 6 years old come July, and this is pretty much a good size adult male barneck scrub python. The Amethystina complex in general all get roughly about 10 feet long or so as adults on average. Some will stay a little bit smaller than that, 8 to 9 foot range for certain individuals, particularly some smaller females will stay in that size range. But some of the larger individuals can get upwards to 12 feet long. The largest scrub python that I've ever personally had was a barneck that was verifiably 14 feet long. He was an absolute giant. And I've heard of some that are upwards of 15 feet. While those larger animals do and have existed, in my opinion, it's a very rare occurrence. To me, a 14-foot scrub python is like a 7-foot tall person. Like, do they exist? Sure, but do you even know one of them? Chances are probably not. So on average, about a 10-foot long Amethystina is about what you're looking at. Like I said, this male right here is about 9 feet long. And when you think of a 9-foot long snake, you probably don't think of a snake that looks like this. Obviously, scrub pythons are very slender for their semi-arboreal to arboreal lifestyle, very muscular, very light. So a 10-foot scrub python does not feel like 10 feet on another larger species. So with that being said, they're a lot more manageable than some of the other larger pythons. So if you want a large constrictor, can't quite accommodate something like a berm or a retic, it's a great option for you. So for reference to start the video, adult male barneck scrub. All right, so now we're taking a look at an adult female barneck. So this girl is a sibling to that male who we were just taking a look at, and she's a little bit larger than him in really every way. She's about 10 feet long and a little bit thicker than him throughout the body, especially in the back third, which is part of the sexual dimorphism with scrub pythons. Once they reach adulthood, you can see pretty significant differences in their head structure as well as the structure of kind of the back half of their body, where females will be more round, more cylindrical, honestly, just for the sake of being able to house and develop eggs, where males will be much more slender, much more vertically compressed, where they obviously do not need to bear that burden. So once you get scrubs to adulthood, they're actually pretty easy to visually sex relative to some of the other python species. But with that said, definitely a big snake, no two ways about it. Not quite as large as some other pythons, but definitely something that you got to be ready for. So this animal is about 6 years old, getting about 2, and she is at the size where I do not try to get her any larger. She will probably continue to grow, put on a little bit more size with time. Her head will continue to grow over the years, but as far as an adult female scrub python goes, particularly with Amethystina, this is what you're looking at. And another thing that is just so nice about these barnecks is as they get older and bigger, they only keep getting nicer and nicer with their color and pattern. To me, she is just an absolutely gorgeous snake. All right, so now we're taking a look at one of my female Aru scrub pythons. So a southern clade type animal, still within Amethystina. And she is between 9 and 10 feet long, pretty good sized snake. She's a wild caught, but came in as about a yearling in 2019. So say about probably 7 or 8 years old on this animal. And she's gotten to the point where her growth rate has really tailed off significantly, where this is probably going to be a good adult size for her. A couple of my Arus are a bit bigger than her. I have a male that's about 11 feet, female that's just shy of 12. So they are a locality type that gets just about as big as the rest of them. Definitely one of the less common forms in captivity. For anyone who saw some of my previous videos, I had a clutch of these last year from a different female. That was the first reproduction of the locality in the US. So super happy about that. Hopefully she can be soon to follow that other female. But one of my favorite localities, one that is underrated just on the account of being uncommon, not having a whole lot of visibility, but with some more captive breeding, with some more availability, I think these are one of the best scrub pythons out there. And sticking with the southern animals, this is a rainforest phase or highland southern scrub python, an adult male, and he, like these other ones, is about that 9 foot mark. So kind of again, getting a good idea of what these amethystina animals generally look like. Across the board, all the locality types, you're pretty much getting this similar kind of adult size, adult body structure. So obviously with one like this, you get that tremendous orange coloration, which is super, super hard to beat. The southern animals have a ton of variety, and to me, this may be the top tier phenotype within the southern clades. So one that I hope to be able to reproduce sometime in the future. But as far as a pet scrub python goes, definitely a great option. He's got a fantastic attitude. A lot of the southern animals, in my experience, have been pretty well mannered, especially ones that are captive bred. He is a wild caught, so I actually got pretty lucky with him as far as having a good demeanor goes. But good 9 foot adult male. He could get a bit bigger. He probably will, but at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm only going to be feeding him on kind of a maintenance schedule just to maintain his current body tone, keep him nice and lean for breeding. So this here is a male Tanimbar scrub python, and these are the true smaller scrub pythons. With adult sizes being approximately 5 to 7 feet long. This male is right around that 6 foot mark, and he is without a doubt an adult. An animal like this is one that I never intend to get any bigger for the remainder of its life. And this is really kind of the perfect scrub python size for somebody who can accommodate a big individual. Definitely like a smaller carpet python, and even with a more slender build. So really amazing. The only issue with these up until now is just the fact that they've been very seldom available, both from a wild caught and a captive bred standpoint. They were amongst the first scrub pythons to be bred in captivity back in the late 90s and early 2000s. But other than Eric Hernandez the last few years, they really have not been produced in captivity with any sort of regularity since kind of the initial period of time when they were being bred. So more animals becoming available will be great for the hobby, great for people who want to keep scrub pythons but can't accommodate a larger one, or live in places like Florida where the amethystina species is restricted, where the Nauta and the Traceae clastolepis are in fact permitted to keep. So lots of upside here with this species as far as the hobby goes, but one of my personal favorites, of course, and really the true small scrub python. Now we're taking a look at an adult female Tanimbar. So she is one of the axanthic patternless variety, one of the 4 color phases, the one that's the most common in the wild. And she is what I would call a large female Tanimbar. As I said, when we looked at the male, the size range on this species is generally 5 to 7 feet for adults, and she is just a tad over 7 feet. The largest individual I've ever seen of this species was a female that Chris Foley had that was about 9 feet long. But kind of as I've been saying throughout this video, that animal was over 20 years old. So the real giant scrub pythons, they take until they're adults to actually achieve that size. So this is a high-end, top size kind of individual, probably top 20% as far as size goes. I acquired her as a wild caught adult, so she was not too much smaller than this when I got her, but definitely in the acclimation process and feeding her up to be a breeder, she definitely put on some extra size with me. So with that said, though, I don't see this as an animal that is uncomfortably big or too large, has inappropriate body weight, but is just a larger individual for the species. So with that in mind, I am cautious when it comes to feeding her about not getting her any bigger than she is right now. Like I've been saying, just because you can get these scrub pythons bigger doesn't mean you necessarily should. Finding a good happy medium is always the way to go. And this is kind of what I believe to be a happy medium for a larger Tanimbar scrub. Now we're looking at an adult male Halmahera. So as you can see, not a very big snake by any means. This guy is captive bred, produced by Chuck Poland. He was born in 2019. So, almost a 7-year-old snake, more than reproductive age. He will continue to get a little bit larger. One of the animals that Blake Bauer is working with at the Oklahoma City Zoo that was part of the first ever captive reproduction of the species is upwards of 12 feet long. So this species can get very big, but in my estimation, a 12-foot Halmahera is almost like a 15-foot barneck. Have they existed? Sure. But is that animal more than likely very old and also just an outlier genetic individual? Probably so. So with these Halmaheras, it seems like when they reach about the 7 to 8 foot range, their growth level really does start to plateau. obviously, as I've been saying, with any reptiles, any snakes, they do continue to grow for the entirety of their lives, but most of that growth is obviously front-ended up until sexual maturity. So very reasonable size snake, manageable for really anybody. A snake like this, in my estimation, can do very well for the entirety of its life in a 4x2x2. Obviously, as I always say, you can never go too big when it comes to these guys, and they will definitely use that enclosure space, especially males. But for anybody who's into scrub pythons, can't quite accommodate one of these 10-footers we've been taking a look at, something like a Halmahera is perfect. So here's an adult female Halmahera now. She is a wild caught where that male was captive bred, and she's a pretty good sized adult, at least in my estimation. She's about 8 to 8.5 feet long, pretty good sized body too. She can damn near eat a jumbo rat. I more than likely will never feed her a prey item that big, just considering she is already this size, but just to give an example of how big this snake is. But as you can tell, obviously, when compared to the amethystina we were looking at, much, much smaller when it comes to an adult. So definitely a great option for anybody who can't house the bigger species and localities, but also want a snake that might be a little bit bigger than a Tanimbar. This is a great middle ground. Halmaheras are very beautiful too, very unique relative to the other scrubs. In this first generation of captive breeding, we have seen the color explosion that you can see in some of these guys is absolutely amazing. So all I know is that in the next few generations, these Halmaheras are going to look just stunning. So here's an adult female Moluccan scrub python, Somalia clastolepis. She's about 10 feet long, really good sized snake. The Moluccans, I would say proportionally, are a little bit thicker bodied than the rest of the scrub pythons, but is very much on the margin, maybe by a 10% deviation at very most. They're still a very slender species of snake, but relative to the other scrubs, a little bit larger. Their heads get really chunky too when they're adults, as you can see right here with this female, really, really beefy head on her. That's just kind of one of the things that they do, where the other scrub pythons don't quite seem to get that big bulbousy head look quite as much. And one of the things about this species that is different from some of the other scrubs, particularly with the females, once they reach adulthood and sexual maturity, and they have their first cycle where they kind of go dark hormonally, they never fully come back. So they're a little bit more on the browner side once they get to adulthood, but are still super beautiful. And right after they shed, a lot more of that gold coloration comes through. So pretty good size species as far as the ones that are legal, where the amethystina are not to keep in the US. These are the larger of the three other species. So if you still want a larger scrub python but live somewhere where you can't keep one, this is a great option for you. All right, so I had to end the video with a giant. This is one of my male Moluccan scrub pythons, and he's the largest scrub python and overall snake in my collection. He's right at about 12 feet long, and as you can tell, very healthy bodied. Huge head on this snake. Just overall absolutely incredible. So this is definitely one that is a kind of exceptionally large individual. Not really unheard of for this species, but you know, I did not raise this snake up. If I was raising a Moluccan up from a baby, I would never really have the intention of growing it this big. But some animals do just become very large, and there's not a whole lot you can really do about it to prevent that. But with that said, it is pretty fun to have such a large scrub python, I'm not going to lie. Definitely is a very enjoyable experience, especially considering he is as well-mannered as he is. A giant scrub python with a bad attitude, not quite as fun of an experience. So, but just to show you guys what they can turn into eventually, it's very rare. I mean, he's my largest scrub that I have. I have 3 more that are between 11 and 12 feet, and they seem absolutely huge to me. But other than that, everybody is pretty much in that same range of all the other snakes that I've been showing you guys in this video. So that is it. That's kind of what scrub pythons are looking like as adults, how big they are. When you hear 10 foot, 12 foot, it's hard to really put exactly into perspective what that looks like. So hopefully this video helped you guys out, and hopefully some prospective scrub keepers out there who were kind of worried about how big they are now have a little more information, a little bit more confidence in the prospect of owning scrub pythons. All right, everybody, thank you for checking out that video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe here on the YouTube channel. Please like and share. I drop a new video every single Friday here on the channel. And if you want to support everything that I have going on here on the YouTube channel or on my podcast as well, please visit patreon.com/CushReptile. It is the absolute best way to support everything that I have going on. All members of all tiers immediately get 50% of their membership fee as a credit towards any future animal that they want to acquire from me, and that credit never expires. Also, as a member of the Patreon, you get first access to any animals that I make available anywhere before the public does, in the order of the tiers. So if there's a project that I have that you've been eyeing for a long time the best way to ensure you have access to it is by going over to the Patreon. Like I just stated, I also have a podcast as well. It is called Cush's Corner and is on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It is also available as a playback on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all of the major podcast platforms if you're an audio fan like myself. I'm also on Morph Market at Cush Reptile as well. That's where you can find my availability at any given time. I'm also on Instagram at Scrub Shepherd, Stephen Cush on Facebook, and please also check out the Somalia group on Facebook. That is my group that I run, all about Somalia, scrub pythons and Boelen's pythons. So for any Somalia fans, that is the place to go. We've developed a really amazing community over there, and it is always growing. All of the links to everything that I just said are in the description below, so please check it all out. Once again, thank you guys for checking out the video, and I'll catch you all back here next week for a new one.